Descending from a family of adventurers and pioneers, Carol Joyce Fancher was the only child of Ted and Jessie Fancher. Carol was born in Kansas City, Missouri on August 19, 1923, 6 years before the Great Depression. Her father was the manager of a prized Jersey dairy herd on the Longview farm, designed and built by Robert A. Long to be the most beautiful farm in the world. It was in this environment that young Carol would grow. When Mr. Long died, J.C. Hall of Hallmark Cards bought most of the dairy herd and hired Carol's father. The emphasis on excellence was impressed on Carol from a very young age, and those values remained throughout her entire life.
In 1935, Carol joined her mother and aunt on a cross-country road trip, traveling on a partly paved Route 66. At summer's end, they headed back to their new home at Hallmark Farm. Carol loved riding horses across the farm and woodland. She learned to cook alongside her mother, who was famous for her fried chicken dinners. Like her mother, Carol enjoyed playing piano, crocheting, sewing, and embroidery, creating most of her wardrobe herself. She also accompanied her father in his work, learning to judge cattle, which was most unusual for a female in those days. Carol's family would often travel on the train with the Hall family and the show cows, including the Borden Dairy Company's original mascot, Elsie. On one trip, the family was in the dining car when a man at the next table cut into his grapefruit. It sprayed into young Carol's eye and she started crying. That man was J.C. Penney. They became good friends for the rest of the trip. She especially enjoyed the 1939 World's Fair in New York City, with its theme, The World of Tomorrow.
After graduating from high school, she attended Kansas State University in Manhattan, where she studied French and majored in home economics. In 1941, while singing in the church choir, Carol spotted 3 brothers on the front row that she hadn't seen before. She boldly asked one of the brothers, Robert Ruxton, to accompany her to a party the next week. A few days later, Carol returned from an errand to see an Indian motorcycle parked in front of the house. Inside, her mother was serving the young gentleman homemade chocolate cake and peppermint ice cream, thus sealing his fate. Bob's family ancestry also included explorers and a well-chronicled mountain man. With a degree in mechanical engineering, he wanted to start his career, but World War II was looming, so Bob joined the Army Air Force and left for Europe. Carol supported the war effort as an aeronautic radio telephone operator and began working for Braniff Airlines in Dallas, Texas. Love Field had become a training ground for pilots and mechanics during wartime. Carol kept all the letters Bob wrote her during this time, not knowing if he would survive the war.
After a stressful 2 years, Carol decided to move back home to Kansas City, where she continued working in the aviation field. Bob was not at liberty to discuss his wartime assignments, but she later learned that he was with a group of soldiers who landed on the beaches of Normandy just after D-Day. When Bob returned in December 1945, he proposed, and they were married the next year. Bob and Carol built a house near their extended families. He went back to school while also working for several engineering firms. Carol worked for the American Legion, helping returning veterans until the boss discovered her cooking skills and gave her a new position, catering lunches and events. In their free time, the couple traveled to the shores of Texas and through Canada, often following in the footsteps of their pioneer ancestors. After their son Gary was born in 1954, Carol became a full-time mother and homemaker.
In 1955, a religious television program called The World Tomorrow caught their attention. Bob tuned in thinking it was a science fiction program. Carol was reminded of the World's Fair with a similar name that made such an impression on her. After listening for a while, they met with two ministers from the sponsoring church and were baptized in November of 1957. After corresponding with several administrators at the church headquarters in Pasadena, California, Bob applied to the church's Ambassador College. He felt that his education and experience might be of service. He was accepted in 1959, and 3 weeks later, they had sold their home, car, and most of their belongings and drove their Jeep with a trailer to their new home on the corner of Del Mar and Orange Grove Avenue.
Bob was a full-time student, and Carol took classes as well. Bob was asked to supervise construction on the campus and work to tie the different parts of the campus together via careful design, hardscape, plantings, and a meandering stream, as well as updating the pool and fountains in the Italian garden. Soon daughter Alice was on her way, and they moved to larger quarters in nearby La Cañada, where she was born. In his senior year of college, Bob was sent to Big Sandy, Texas, to lay groundwork for a new college campus. He continued his studies from a distance, the first student on the new Texas campus, completing his 4th degree and graduating from Ambassador College in 1963. Carol spent her time in Pasadena taking care of the children and helping Isabel Hay and Loma Armstrong test recipes for several in-house church publications until she and the children could join Bob in their new home on Faculty Row in Big Sandy. Carol enjoyed decorating the new home, as well as mentoring co-eds in the home arts. Bob, as Director of Buildings and Grounds, began creating Lake Loma and oversaw the construction of roads, dormitories, faculty homes, classrooms, and the campus airstrip, where he and the family enjoyed taking to the air on occasion.
And then suddenly, tragedy struck. On May 14, 1965, Bob and another man were driving during a torrential downpour on a highway that was improperly banked. They began to slide, smashing into an oncoming telephone truck. Bob did not survive the crash. Carol had unexpectedly lost her father, her mother-in-law, and now her husband of nearly 2 decades in a few short years. She carried on as best she could, spending time visiting and helping those in need while taking care of her children and the home. Carol continued to hone her pie baking skills and on a whim entered the Gilmer Jamboree Pie Contest. To everyone's surprise, she won the grand prize. When they discovered that a non-native Texan had won the contest, it nearly caused a scandal. She soon caught the attention of a widower from Missouri. A relationship developed, and Walter Johnson and his 2 young sons, Doug and Dave, officially merged their family with Carol's on September 27, 1966, and they made their new home together near Kansas City.
Walter worked in banking and was also an ordained minister. The church asked him to move to Vancouver, British Columbia, to work with finances in the Canadian office. They accepted the challenge. The family emigrated to Canada on October 17, 1968. Carol embraced the local bounty, entering some of her creations at the Pacific National Exhibition and bringing home more ribbons. As always, they continued hosting guests and events at their home. Carol enjoyed the role of hostess over the 14 years they were in Vancouver. The family spent spring breaks and summers visiting Carol's mother at her home on Puget Sound near Seattle. All 4 children graduated from high school in North Vancouver and went off to college. Graduations and weddings and grandchildren followed. Now, with an empty nest, they were able to travel more often.
In 1981, they were again asked to move, 2,300 miles away to the middle of Texas. Embracing their new life in Waco and Austin, the couple was well loved by the church members. They had planned for Waco to be their home for retirement, but in 1989 they were transferred once again, this time to Redding, California. Walter and Carol found a home on the Sacramento River Trail. As was their way, they designed and used the home to serve the need of their congregations, even when Walter was asked to retire. They took special time to visit with Carol's mother, who died in 1990 at the age of 102. Within a year, Walter was diagnosed with cancer and died a few months later on April 2, 1992, at the age of 70.
After 25 years of marriage to Walter, Carol was alone again. For 8 years, she continued to host church-related meetings and gatherings at her home, visiting other widows and bringing meals to people in need. She started entering baking contests again, winning more ribbons for her pies, cakes, and sewing projects. She traveled a bit, taking a trip down the coast of California with granddaughter Pam Johnson, and joining family on a cruise through the Inside Passage to Alaska. As time passed and circumstances changed, it seemed best for Carol to relocate to Shadow Hills, California, to be with her daughter and family. Carol's newly remodeled space included everything on her wish list: a garden of her own, a yard for her dog, and a kitchen where she could continue to bake. Carol's sewing skills from that time have a lasting church legacy. She made 2 sets of blue curtains to serve as a backdrop for Pasadena church services. These live on today in physical form, but also as a virtual backdrop used by people around the globe on Zoom.
Always up for adventure, Carol made new friends and started traveling again. She flew to Australia and toured the land down under. She also went to the UK, where she talked her way into a privately owned castle that had belonged to her first husband's family centuries before. She made many road trips with friends across the country and to Canada. She drove several ladies in her big white Buick, white-knuckling to Solvang on a memorable day trip. When deteriorating vision meant she could no longer drive her car, Carol was still able to travel in other ways. Her last airplane flight was to Texas in 2018 for the wedding of her stepson Dave Johnson and his bride Michelle. The flight landed at Love Field, where she had worked 75 years earlier. She was welcomed and was shown a special exhibit that celebrated the history of the field and of Braniff Airlines, which brought back many memories for her. When she wasn't traveling, Carol enjoyed the many events that took place at the extended family home, especially the events with large groups. She was always eager to join the party and help out when she could.
As time went on, Carol's mobility and eyesight continued to fail. She'd made it clear to the family that she never wanted to go to the puppy farm, her term for assisted living facilities. The family created a new apartment for her to safely age in place. Throughout the pandemic, Carol looked forward to church services on Zoom and fellowshipping sessions where she loved listening to everyone's updates and always had stories of her own to share. As soon as in-person church services began again, she made every effort to attend. It was always the highlight of her week. As 2021 ended, a series of small strokes left her needing special help. Her last days were spent under hospice care in her own home, with friends and family visiting in person, via FaceTime or phone call. So many loving and supportive cards, letters, flowers, and special messages arrived, showing her impact on the lives of others throughout her 98.5 years. On Saturday, March 12th, she took her final breath at home, surrounded by family.
Carol is survived by her family, Gary Ruxton and wife Jacqueline, Doug Johnson and wife Janelle, Dave Johnson and wife Michelle, daughter Alice Abler and husband Dwayne. And between the siblings, 10 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren. Over her lifetime, Carol would look for ways to help others. She found joy in giving and sharing, and was always ready to encourage others in her own way. She was passionate about family values and home arts, and maintained unwaveringly high standards. Her determination, strength, and faith serve as examples to others who knew her and continue to look to a future world of tomorrow, the time she looked toward with great anticipation, a time of healing and a time of great joy. The last piece of music that Carol listened to was one that had been recorded during the pandemic, performed by some of her family for a church convention.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 1,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. I worship Your holy name.